Okey-doke.
Hey, good day, everybody. This is Emar Sopatut, and we're joined once again by Georgia Tech cross-country head coach Alan Drosky. Alan, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Early morning practice in the books. Good solid day, and taking care of a few administrative tasks, and then be heading home in the afternoon. So good day so far.
Well, good. I know you're going to get into major preparations for the ACC Championships next week, and we'll delve into that in a moment. But first, let's go over the Penn State meet. Went up to Pennsylvania, able to perform well, the men and the women. Let's start with the women. Nicole Fegans, she won the individual competition. The team was able to place second as a unit. What about the women's race just for Georgia Tech at Penn State? Did you reach some benchmarks and achieve some of the goals that you went out to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last time that we visited was right after a pretty unsatisfactory trip to Minnesota, and where we felt like we didn't really run our kind of race. So we really focused on making sure we executed what I would think of as a kind of typical Georgia Tech race when we run well. And that's kind of getting out a little bit conservatively and then moving up through the whole competition. Whereas Minnesota, we were out a little too hard, a little too aggressively, and we're moving backward throughout the race. So really focused on trying to make sure we did that at Penn State. And I thought the women did a great job with that. The competition, the meet was medium-sized meet. On the women's side, it was 16 teams. On the men's side, it was 8, so a little bit of a small field on the men's side. But good competition. Michigan went into the meet, I think, ranked number 8 in the country, so we knew they were going to be very strong, and they were. But we were a very strong second over some really good teams, including Northwestern and Penn State. So the women, executed really well. Nicole obviously had a fantastic day. When we talked after Minnesota, she had a good day. I think she finished 8th at Minnesota, but it was almost like she just needed that kind of race to assure her that she was kind of in really good shape, and so she just ran very confidently at Penn State, took control of the race fairly early, and kind of maintained a little bit of a cushion all the way through to the end. So that was outstanding to see. Through 4, I think we talked last time after Minnesota. I mean, we've got 4 very strong women that we think can really compete with the top 4 almost anywhere. Of course, you need 5 to score, and our 5th runner right now is Katie Earwood, a redshirt freshman. Katie's improving, meet to meet and in training week to week. And there's also a very capable group right behind Katie that could be for that number 5 spot. So that's what we'll focus on kind of as we head into next week's conference meet.
You mentioned the strong finishes and having a fast kick. Obviously, Nicole did that, but Claire Moritz, who we spoke with earlier this week, she talked about that as well. She jumped 11 spots in the final 1,200 meters in the race to finish 5th overall in the individual competition. What about Claire's performance? And then what about the runners and working on that strategic side of things, having a slower pace to begin, being in a group, and then having a fast kick?
Yeah, Claire, that was a huge race for Claire. And in fact, Claire is having an outstanding season for us. And for each individual, it's really about trying to find, that race that they need to run. And Claire has really done a great job of kind of knowing how she needs to run. She's a little bit cautious in the beginning, a little conservative, doesn't get too far behind, but she's not working too hard early and then coming on strong late. And she did. The last particularly 1,000. A lot of it was up a hill, and she was behind a huge group that she passed all of them to end up 5th. And with Nicole winning, and then there were 3 Michigan women between Nicole and Claire, and those 3 women from Michigan are national class runners. So Claire really stepped up to a new level, and the whole team, like we just talked about, just trying to make sure that early in the race you're getting a good rhythm, getting your breathing going, not getting too stressed and not overworking that first mile, and feeling like the last half of the race you really are ready to kind of start pushing. And in this course, it was another challenging course like Minnesota was, but not quite as challenging as Minnesota. But it with about a mile and a half to go, they come to the bottom of the worst hill on the course. And we talked about it the day before, like at that bottom of that hill, you've got to reach that point kind of in control, feeling like you can push over the last mile and a half. And I think across the board, they did a great job with that.
Yeah, and moving on to the men, they finished 4th in the team competition, and James Cragin finished 4th individually. But we spoke with Zach Jaeger earlier this week about the meet, and similar to the women, seemed like after Minnesota, the theme seemed to be redemption and putting together a better performance on the cross country field. Did you feel that was the approach that the men took and were able to finish in the competition 4th out of the 8 teams as you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way they timed the companies that time cross country competitions now, it's particularly the one that has timed Minnesota and timed Penn State's at pttiming.com. And the way that you can look at the results at the end of the meet, every individual, you can see where they were at each split during the race. And there's either a green arrow that you're moving up and how many places you moved up, or a red arrow moving down, how many places you lost. And after Minnesota, it was virtually all red, which is very uncharacteristic of our team. And so we changed that. And at Penn State, it was just the opposite. It was just about everybody in the green moving up. I thought the guys did a really good job. I thought James Cragin, put himself up in the lead pack, looked comfortable the whole time, took the lead probably around 2 miles to go. Maybe could have been a little bit patient there, but he was feeling good, took the lead, took a shot, paid for that a little bit, but broke the lead pack up from about maybe a group of about 10 to 12 until it was just 4 of them. And so James kind of separated that lead pack and then ended up finishing 4th, which was a great race for James. Zach's having a good season. He had a phenomenal race at Minnesota, and was a little bit off, I think, at Penn State. But I think the important thing was you could tell early on, even at the mile mark, that Zach didn't look that comfortable, looked like he was working harder than he should be at that point. And you could kind of tell that it wasn't going to be a great day. And I think what was really important for Zach to find out that day is he just kept hanging in there, plugging away, didn't fall too far back, and was able to really close over the last half mile of the race to move up to be our second guy. And I thought that was a very important race for Zach, because he could have easily, the way he was feeling in that race early on, he could have easily let that go, and it could have just been a bad day. Probably 2 years ago in his career, that's probably what would have happened. But he's got to a point now where, even on a day where he's not feeling 100%, he's able to dig down and kind of pull out a pretty good day. And so I think that was a great effort for Zach, along with Henrik Anderson and Nick Nyman. So the guy who were our 3rd and 4th runners, but really solid day. Still left us a little hungry, but it was a much better day than Minnesota, and kind hopefully was a springboard into next week when we get to line up against the conference competition.
And that's the meet we need to talk about right now, the ACC Championships in South Bend, Indiana on Friday, October 29th. How have the preparations gone for the team? Just as far as the race or the timings and tapering or hard times, how's the team getting ready for that competition? And have you been there before to South Bend on this course to scout it out, or do you have an idea of what you're getting into?
It's been, yes, we this group of student athletes have not been to South Bend for the cross country, to see the cross country course. We've been to South Bend to run the conference indoors. So they're familiar with campus and things, but not the golf course, which is right on the edge of campus. But we've been there years ago. So I'm familiar with the golf. It's held on a golf course on the edge of campus. So I'm familiar with the course and the terrain. It's, we've run 2 hilly hard courses. This will be one where we go on Thursday and preview the course. They'll be fired up because this is, virtually pancake flat. It's very little by the way of hills in this course. Virtually no hills, to be honest with you. But so they'll be fired up to see, after running hard courses, to see a really, flat course that they won't have to deal with hills and such. So with the preparations have gone well, practices have gone well. The workouts, the hard workouts that we do generally twice a week, have progressed really well. This morning would have, went the way we were hoping it would go. So I feel like we're moving in a great direction heading into the conference meet, ready as a team, both on the women's side and the men's side, to have our best meet of the season. And it will take that at the conference meet. Our conference is outstanding in cross country, men and women both, a good number of ranked teams in the conference. So the competition will be challenging, but what you really got to do is focus more on just what does each individual need to do to kind of prepare for that race, execute the race plan. And so we're talking about those things heading into next week, but we feel good about it.
Well, Coach, thank you for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And hopefully we can catch up after the race.
Sounds great. You have a great weekend.
All right, you too.